Hi there, it's Chris, chap in the cap, Motolegends. Today I want to talk to you about a new short boot, a really exciting new short boot from the Italian brand TCX. It's a boot that's called the Dartwood. So recently, following one of our video reviews of a short motorcycle boot, we got into a bit of a debate with a customer on social media about the validity of short boots for motorcycling. He did not think that they were safe and appropriate footwear. He was quite rude about them. Actually went on to suggest that if you had an accident, you might find that your insurance company wouldn't pay out because you weren't wearing proper footwear. Now, I've got to say that on that score, he's completely wrong. All of the short boots that we sell, all of the short boots that you'll find in any motorcycle shop these days are classified as, or are CE certified, which means that they are classified as PPE, personal protective equipment. So there are no issues about wearing a short motorcycle boot on a bike. But yet he did make a valid point in that clearly if you've got a taller boot, you've got better coverage of the shin. So here's a taller boot, here's a shorter one. If you have an accident and you hit the bumper of a car or something impacts on your leg at this height, you're going to have some protection because there'll be some kind of polyurethane protector in there. Here, there's just going to be your skin and bone. So yes, a taller boot has some greater degree of protection. But as with many things in motorcycling, there is a trade-off, and the trade-off in this instance is not safety, it's comfort. So let's say you're going to be on the bike all day, but you're going to have to do a lot of walking, you're going to have to get off the bike, maybe you're going into town, maybe you're riding for work, you've got a pair of protective jeans on and you've got to walk from site to site. A tall boot is not going to be particularly comfortable, and no one wants to trudge around all day with a big clumping touring boot. So the trade-off is very much in terms of comfort. Yet at the same time, it's got to be said that these things are not black and white. Some of the short boots out there have a much, much stronger footbed than you will find in your average tall boot. So, for example, this boot, the Daytona, and I'm thinking also a good example would be the Roker Urban Racer. This boot is hugely strong. So in terms of if you had an accident and something rode over your foot, you're going to be much better protected in a boot like this than you would in a boot like this. So again, it's not black and white. Yes, I can see the point. Obviously, it's a very clear point that you get higher protection up the shin, but it's not necessarily the case that a tall boot is a more protective boot. The boot that we're going to talk about today is called the Dartwood. And as I've mentioned, it's from TCX. We love this boot. It sits somewhere in our view between a trainer, between something like the old Street Ace from TCX or the Street 3 that we reviewed recently, and what we might term a proper work boot, something that looks more like a Timberland or a Caterpillar. It straddles the gap in the middle. We love the leather. It's made from a leather that's known as a pull-up leather. Now, a pull-up leather is called pull-up because when it's tanned, they stretch the leather. They wet it and they stretch it, and as it dries differently in different speeds in different areas, and bits of the leather go dark, bits go lighter. So you get this great natural patina, this natural look, this natural worn look to the leather. Now, some manufacturers, I've seen them do it with boots. They do it in a different way. They do it very artificially. The boots never look real. But what's nice about the leather on these boots, and you see it more on the brown than the black, it still exists on the black, but you see it more on the brown. It's got this natural gradation of tints, and I just think it looks very authentic. We also like the crepe sole. Again, that's kind of beaten up. It's got a nice kind of patina to it. So I just think it's a fabulous looking boot. And indeed, when we all here at Motolegends, when we first looked at this boot, there was a unanimous feeling of this is a great boot. Everyone wanted one. And that doesn't often happen. Normally when we see something, there'll be Sean will like one thing, I won't like another. But very rarely are we unanimous in our views. But everyone loved this boot. I think it's going to be a big seller. I think it's going to be very popular. In terms of the boot and its functionality and its spec and so on, the boot has D3O protectors in the ankle. They're very light, you can barely feel them, and obviously as with all D3O, it's nice and soft. It gets softer as it heats up with the heat from your body, but obviously in an impact that hardens. You've got what's called a counter in the heel for protection and a counter in the toe. You've also got here on the front a little gear change pad. That's actually embossed into the leather, and what it means is that if the gear change leaves a mark, and normally it will do, it won't spoil the front of the shoe. That'll be restricted to this area where the gear change pad is. You've got a waterproof membrane in this boot, so it's a waterproof boot. Now, there are 3 versions of this boot that are being done by TCX. There's the brown one, the black one, and then there's another version. It's a little bit more expensive, which is a gore-tex, a GTX version. Now, we are not doing that version for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we do not think that you're going to be any more waterproof in a gore-tex version, because the problem, if there's a problem with a short boot, is if you're going out in heavy rain, the rain's going to hit the ground, it's going to come over the top of the shaft. In truth, if you really want to stay dry in heavy rain, you do not wear a short boot. But the gore-tex boot is going to operate the same as this. Water's going to hit the ground, it's going to come over the top. So on one level, we think you are wasting money by going for a gore-tex membrane. The other reason is, frankly, we just don't like the boot as much. It's got a different leather, it's got a stamped leather, it's got a grained leather. We just don't like it as much as this boot. So this boot comes in at £160. The gore-tex version is 180. If you particularly want the gore-tex version, that's going to be out there, but we've just decided to go with these 2. We just prefer them. You've got, with this boot, also to help ingress and egress, you've got a zip up the inside. Now, what you would expect on a waterproof boot is a gusset. And the reason you have a gusset is that is a waterproof gusset. It's basically a waterproof membrane. If you didn't have that and you had a zip, water would come in the zip, you would not have a waterproof boot. But because that restricts the degree to which the boot can open, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to get it into these boots without loosening the laces. So the zip is a help, but it doesn't mean that you can just slide in and ignore the laces. Now, one of the things that this boot has got, if we go back to that discussion about the safety and protective qualities of boots, a good tall motorcycle boot, I'm thinking about something like a Daytona, will have a shank in the sole. That short Daytona I looked at a little while ago, that's got a shank in the sole. But never have I seen a shank in the sole of a boot like this, a kind of more casual, almost trainer-like style. But this has a shank in the sole. It's done in a particular way. Now, a shank is there to give rigidity to the sole. And the shank in this boot is designed such that it doesn't impede flexibility in terms of your ability to walk. So it'll still bend, it is still flexible front to aft, but it gives great strength across the boot, so transverse rigidity. And that's particularly important because the reason you have a shank in the sole is if something then drives over your foot, it stops the boot from collapsing. So all power to TCX, I think it's fantastic. I've never seen this in a short boot, but it is fantastic and amazing that they've managed to put a shank in a small boot like this. In terms of comfort inside the boot, you've got an inner sole. It's from a company called Ortholite, and it's made of something that might be akin to a memory foam. So that molds to your foot over time. So it might take a week or 2, but eventually this boot is going to mold around your foot. The outer sole, and in fact in the outer sole, you see this orange line, that is the shank in the sole that you can see through there. The outer sole is something called a ground trax. Not come across a ground trax sole before. I don't know whether it's just a made up name from TCX, but it's non-slip, it's oil resistant. They also say that it's self-cleaning. Personally, I think that's complete rubbish because I wore a pair of these, left them outside, they were still filthy in the morning. But that notwithstanding, it's a fantastic boot, £160, really, I'm not sure it can be beaten. If you'd like to see more TCX boots or more short boots in general, then visit the website motolegends.com. To learn more about the Dartwood in particular, then if you click on one of the links on the screen, sometimes they're up there, sometimes they're down there, that will take you directly to the relevant page on our website. There you can check out the spec in a little bit more detail, you can check availability, and obviously if you want to buy a pair, you can do that there and then. Now when you buy from us, we try to make the process as simple, straightforward and risk-free as we possibly can. There's no delivery charge on any item of protected wear that you buy from us. Returns are totally free, and what's more, we give you a full 12 months in which to decide whether you do want to return something to us. We have the best price guarantee in the business. Now, John Lewis is rightly famed for its never knowingly undersold promise. We go one stage better. If you can find anybody selling anything that we sell at a price that is lower than ours, we will beat that price by a full 10%. If the company is in the EU and not in the UK, we will match their landed price. Now, there are a few terms and conditions to do with our price beat, nothing particularly onerous, but if you are going to price beat us, then I suggest you visit the website and check out what those terms and conditions are. If in the future you'd like to receive bulletins from us about new products, then if you go to the website, at the top of every page there's a piece of script that says newsletter sign up. Click on there, within seconds you'll be in business. In future you'll receive our email bulletins. If you prefer, however, to get your information videographically, that is to say in this form, we would be simply delighted if you want to become a subscriber to our YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking on the button below. Now, I'd like to finish off with a word about our fabulous little shop here at Motolegends. We are based about a mile from the centre of Guildford, a mile from the railway station, and as I suggest, the footprint of the shop is quite small, but it's attached to our warehouse where we have more than £2 million worth of stock arranged over 3 floors. Technically, that makes us the second largest motorcycle apparel shop in the UK, but we think that we are far more than just the amount of merchandise we have here in the building. We're all about service, we're all about personal fitting. We have the highest Trustpilot ranking in the business. When you come and see us, we'll serve you only the finest Italian illy coffee, or we'll serve you proper Yorkshire tea in a proper teapot. And who knows, if you're lucky, you might even get to savour one of Sean's mum's delicious motorcycle-shaped shortbread biscuits. Anyway, this has been Chris. I hope to talk to you again soon.